Hello and welcome to All Hands on Tech. I'm Daniel Blazer. On today's episode, I had the pleasure of speaking with Matt Wojtkun. Despite a successful career in communications, Matt realized that something was missing. After a lot of hard work and dedication, he successfully transitioned into a front-end software developer. His story is inspiring for anyone considering a similar move or any existing developers looking to grow in their roles. Thank you so much for joining me, Matt. It's really a pleasure to speak with you today.
Happy to be here.
To get things started, can you kind of just give me like a brief overview of your career previous to becoming a developer?
Sure. So I grew up in Massachusetts, and then I came down to Washington, D.C. for undergraduate school. Went to American University, and I graduated in 2006. And shortly after graduating, I entered the field of communications. So from about 2006 until 3 years ago, I was doing communications work for a lot of various organizations and various verticals. I started off at an international nonprofit. Then I worked for the federal government. I've worked for the Food and Drug Administration, doing food policy issues and communications around that. I then worked on a statewide political campaign in Virginia as a communications director. And I also worked on the Hill for a member of Congress as a press secretary, which was very eye-opening and fun. And then right before I transitioned to being a software engineer, I worked at a global public affairs firm, working with Fortune 500 clients. And it was a really fun career, but I thought it was time for something different.
Yeah. I kind of want to learn a little bit about that. It sounds like, as far as, for somebody in the communications field, you were kind of on a good trajectory. Probably a lot of people, if that was their, their career path, it seems like you're kind of checking the boxes and getting some great experience. So with that in mind, like, what inspired you to make the transition into becoming a developer at the age of 33, I believe it was, right?
The inspiration was, it was kind of slow, and it didn't hit me all at once. I just went through all the jobs that I've had and all the industries that I've worked in the communications field in. And I just realized that I was sort of bouncing around every year to 2 years to 3 years to a new job. And I always thought it was sort of the organization that I was working at, or the entity that I was working at, that was the issue. Like, I didn't like communicating about topic A, and I'd rather communicate about topic B. But really, when I finally got to a point where, I was working hard, I was good at my job, I was making good money, but it wasn't satisfying. I was waking up every day, and I wasn't really excited about tackling the challenges of the day-to-day work. And I just thought there's probably something else that I could be doing that would be just more fulfilling. So I started to look around, think about what else I could do. And I had a friend who had been a software engineer a few years ago. He was already a software engineer for about 15 years. And I just asked him, hey, can you show me what you do every day? Like, what is it that you do, number one? But can you kind of show me what you do every day? He worked from home full time. So he kind of like popped up a code editor and showed me what he was doing. And then he sort of showed me on his local development server what he was working on. And I just thought it was really cool. So he was the one who sort of got me started with, he was sort of like my coding mentor, if you will. Sort of got me started with looking into HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Just gave me some resources on the web to go look at. And, from there, I sort of, that was kind of like the turning point. Was I was like, this is really fun. I love working on this stuff. I love learning about it. And the sort of turning point for me was when I would be learning just the basic front end stack, so the CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. And I would get up early in the morning around 6 a.m. and I would be having so much fun learning this stuff that when 8:15, 8:30 came around, when I would have to leave to go to my actual job, I just got so frustrated because I was like, I just want to do this all day. And so that's kind of when I knew that this is something, number one, I had an aptitude for, because I was actually building some pretty cool stuff. And that I knew that, at some point, if I just got some if I just had someone over my shoulder showing me what to do, I could take it and run with it.
That's really cool. I think a lot of people with their careers, like maybe they never experienced that kind of draw that you mentioned, like having that kind of realization of, man, I just want to keep doing this. And I'm finding a lot of, like you said, fulfillment. There's something really powerful to that. And like I said, I don't know how many people actually have that experience. So it's cool that you're able to kind of recognize that as like, okay, this is something worth pursuing, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of people ask me about it, and I always say, try to think about something that you would love to do every day, that you don't think about it as like work. But to be honest with you, it's you can't really tell people that because it's not true. Like not everyone knows what they want to do, and that's like half the battle. So I understand.
Yeah, that makes sense. Once you had this realization, like what was the primary obstacle that you then faced in, okay, I do want to pursue this. Now I have to switch from communications to software development. Like what was the primary obstacle at that point?
So I think the primary obstacle at that point was sort of centered around like if I'm going to be able to do this full time, I need to be paid for it, but I don't have any training in this. I don't have any certifications. I really don't have any knowledge enough to go out and sort of convince someone, let me build this stuff for you. Not only did I not know a lot at the time, I kind of knew like a very base level about programming and coding, but I just didn't have like the professional experience that I think would warrant me being paid for it. So I kind of started to look at other avenues to sort of get that experience. So I started doing like courses on Coursera and Udemy, like sort of like the $25 to $50 a month, sort of give me a course, let me learn it and move on from that. And I did that for a few months, but then I just sort of started thinking like, I think I need more like formal training. And at the time I had a pretty good job. So I talked to my wife and I said, hey, I think I'm going to look into doing one of these coding boot camps because I think if I just got hands-on instruction for 3 months, I think I could really do I think I could become dangerous with this stuff. So that's when I started looking into the boot camps.
As you know, it's a popular route right now for a lot of people. It can also be a little bit controversial. So I don't know, maybe could you share like a couple of the upsides and the downsides that you experienced going the boot camp route?
Yeah. Well, I think number one, I think there's a lot of boot camps out there. So I think there was, when these things started in like 2009, 2010, 2011, I think they were very sought after and popular and much cheaper too. I think it was sort of like a new thing. And then I think in the mid 2010s, there's sort of like a saturation. Like there was a lot of boot camps out there. There was big ones, small ones. And you really didn't know what you were kind of going to get. Like obviously you go to a marketing website and they're trying to sell you stuff. So they mention salary, like average salary, starting salaries after you exit the boot camp and placement rates and all that stuff. And it always sounds good and it makes you want to go into the boot camp. But then when you look at it, it's like, the boot camp that I went to was $10,000. Some of them, that was like the cheapest one I could find. And I did a ton of research. And I think, at the end of the day, if you want to do a boot camp, number one, it's something you have to make sure that you actually want to do because it's a significant amount of time and effort and resources. And you're not only just like not having an income for 3 months because you're going full time to this boot camp. You also have to pay rent and buy groceries. So you're kind of burning the candle at both ends here. So at the end of the day, I did a ton of research on it. I did a lot of sort of like listening sessions for boot camps. And I came to the conclusion that you really get out of it what you put into it. You can't expect to just go to a boot camp, watch a couple videos, and be taught how to do this stuff. You have to someone is going to give you the foundation for learning, and you have to take it from there and run with it. So, but I think there's been a little bit of market correction with boot camps recently. Even the one I went to in 2017 is no longer around. It was called the New York Code and Design Academy. But at the end of the day, I only had 4 kids in my boot camp, 4 people in my cohort. And it was a great time. It was a small class. We got a lot of good hands-on instruction. And I actually, I did pretty well with it. And obviously, 3.5 years later, I actually say this a lot. I think doing the boot camp was actually the second best decision of my life, coming after marrying my wife.
Cool to hear that you had such a positive experience. How long did it take after the boot camp to land your first development job?
So the short answer is I actually landed a job a week and a half after I graduated from the boot camp.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I was surprised myself. I honestly planned for about 3 months of job searching, and I saved up enough money to last for 3 months of job searching after the boot camp without a job or taking an internship or something like that. So I was very lucky. I think one of the main things that if anyone's looking for a boot camp, some advice I would give is to make sure that you find out the boot camp's sort of connections to the local tech community. One of the most valuable things, other than being in the classroom and learning, is going to visit developer teams at companies. You basically you get to see just even looking at a room full of developers is, number one, inspiring, but you also get to sit there and you ask them questions about their day to day, what they look for in candidates, and a lot of people are going to give you very candid responses about what they're looking for. So that was actually one of the biggest. It should be the biggest selling point, one of the biggest selling points for anyone looking to do a coding bootcamp. But in my experience, I visited a company. It was called Hatch Apps, and what they tried to do was they were getting into the low code, no code sector. So if you wanted to make a mobile app or something like that, you basically go in, you log into a platform, you sort of drag and drop, and then at a click of a button, it would spit out like an Android or an iOS app. So it was a cool concept. It's a very small startup. We visited them and we had like sort of roundtable discussion with one of their engineers. And right at the end of it, this is like the last week of the boot camp. Right at the end of it, they said, "Hey, if you guys are interested, we're actually looking for a junior front end developer. Send us your resumes." And so within 20 minutes of getting back from that meeting, I put together a resume, sent it in. I got a response back within 40 minutes saying, "Hey, yeah, definitely come on in." So I was very lucky. I did have my portfolio website, looked pretty good. And I think that was also a function of my communications background. I sort of packaged myself really well, especially in my portfolio website. And so I think that impressed right up front. And then, and then the rest is history. We went through the interview process, and that was my first development job.
That's very, very cool and very inspiring. I hope. I bet a lot of people that hear that story are like, "Wow, that's cool. That's a cool experience." You kind of touched on this, but like, how do you think your communications experience has helped you as an engineer? You mentioned like getting your portfolio locked into place, but in what other ways has kind of that experience served you?
There's like applying for jobs and interviewing for jobs. There's that aspect, but then there's also like the day to day while being at a job, and you've already been hired and you're sort of doing your day to day work. I would say with interviewing and job searching, you really need to be able to, as I said before, sort of package yourself. These tech companies are really hungry for developer talent, and they're getting a lot of resumes and they're getting a lot of applications, and so to make yourself stand out, you sort of have to make it easy for the person who's on the other side, the hiring manager, looking at the resume or looking at the portfolio website or looking at your GitHub. Make it organized, make it clear, and just make sure stuff works. You don't want to have a portfolio project on your website that is just littered with console log errors and just you click a button and nothing happens, or the core functionality just doesn't work. So I think that's one of the main things. And then even at work, clear communication and clear writing is at such a premium, especially for developers. A lot of developers, I think a lot of companies, if they wanted to hire a robot, they would probably go buy one. They're looking for real people that understand how to work with others, how to communicate urgencies and importance very clearly to other colleagues, because you're never just going to be coding in a vacuum. You're always going to be working with like a customer success person or an engineering manager or a fellow developer. And honestly, like what I've kind of found in my career so far as a developer is that communication is really, really important. You're not only communicating verbally, you're also communicating in writing, but also through your code. How you name functions and name your methods, and how you actually add comments to your code to help other developers who are probably going to be taking on this code after you're gone, or when you transition to another feature in the product, is very, very important. And I think last and most importantly, in my communications career, obviously I did communications, but I also had several jobs which came with several different managers and management styles. So I think that's another important point about anyone looking to transition and go into a boot camp, is that people are looking for stuff like well beyond your technical skill. They want to make sure you have the soft skills, and knowing how to work with colleagues, how to understand project requirements and deadlines is just as important as being able to, as just as important as your clean JavaScript code or something like that. So those are the things that I've kind of taken with me from my communications career.
That's awesome. Do you miss anything from your previous career in communications?
That's a loaded question. I think what I really liked about my previous career was I liked writing a lot. I liked the writing and organization of, say an organization like Pluralsight, for instance, coming up with like what you say about the company and how you prove your points. I loved coming up with talking points. I loved coming up with one-pagers that describe overall like a vision, because your writing really sort of reflects how you think. So I think that's something I miss. I miss writing more like long-form stuff. At my company right now, I work at a company called League Apps. And we're trying to get an engineering blog off the ground, so it's something I'm starting to get involved in. But I think I miss a lot of the writing aspects of my old job. But in a way, even when I'm writing code, I do try to make it very human readable, like very declarative, like, hey, just do this thing instead of like listing out steps. So I kind of get a little bit of that, but it's definitely something I miss, is the longer form writing when I was in the comms world.
Yeah. That definitely makes sense. You mentioned Pluralsight a second ago. This is obviously a Pluralsight podcast. So I've got to ask you, like, what role has Pluralsight played in your growth as an engineer?
Yeah. So Pluralsight's actually been pretty instrumental. When I first got started, before I did the boot camp, had never heard of Pluralsight. I honestly didn't really hear about it until, in full disclosure, my brother works at Pluralsight, and I had no idea what it was, but he told me about it, and I looked into it. And it's, for the last year and a half, 2 years, it's been very influential for me. The thing I really like about Pluralsight is that, I don't come from a very technical background. I'm not a computer nerd. Like, I have a lot to learn. That's one of the things I hope everyone listening to this understands, is that when you transition to a career in programming, you start off behind a lot of people and behind in the knowledge of what's going on. So for me, I don't really enjoy reading super dense technical documentation. And when I want something where it's like, I just want someone in a video to explain this to me very high level, start really from ground zero, and then sort of walk me through the big pieces and how they all fit together. That's sort of to me, that's the biggest benefit of Pluralsight and their video content. And then the learning paths, like there's the videos themselves that go through that process, but then the learning paths themselves, if you have 8 videos in a row, they're going to really walk you through the material in a very nice way. And it's going to make it very understandable for you. So that's sort of been the biggest benefit for Pluralsight for me.
Are there any specific Pluralsight authors that maybe you really have resonated with, or you want to kind of shout out as being instrumental in your journey?
Absolutely. So most recently, I actually just this year, I guess I'll start off with a little bit of a story. So 2020 has obviously been a very interesting and exciting and also frustrating and terrible year. So I think when I first went into 2020, I told myself I wanted to get a lot better. I wanted to learn more programming languages. I wanted to learn more concepts, more architectures, more frameworks. And in particular, I wanted to learn a language that was type safe. I've been working in JavaScript for a really long time. It's a dynamically typed language. I wanted to learn something that was very strongly typed. So I thought, you know what, why don't I learn Swift and iOS because I love Apple products. And so most recently I made my first ever iOS app. It's a little chess clock. It's called the Simple Chess Clock because I'm a big fan of chess, love playing. And I was like, how do I learn this stuff? And honestly, the Pluralsight videos, the learning path, iOS development fundamentals has been awesome. So Simon Allardyce, he does the videos for Swift fundamentals and iOS 11 fundamentals. Like the way he described Swift the language and then iOS the development environment was just awesome. So I'll definitely give a shout out to him. Also in iOS, Andrew Bancroft, he did a video on iOS debugging and data persistence, which was also just those two videos in the iOS learning path were really fantastic. As a JavaScript developer, so I write a lot of JavaScript and also have been using React for the last 2 or 3 years. Corey House has been really awesome. I mean, honestly, any one of his videos, I'm always a big fan when I see his name next to a video. I know that he's going to like present it in a very understandable way and sort of walk us through all the options. And then I think the last person I'll mention is someone who I could probably just listen to all day, every day. Nigel Poulton. He does a lot of the Docker ones. So I was learning Docker at the end of last year into this year, and he's got the Docker, the big picture, and Docker deep dive, and just the way he presents, like it's very technical and very dense, but he does a really great job of explaining it. But also he just has a way of presenting information that is it's just fun. It makes it interesting and it makes it fun, keeps it light, and it was very helpful.
I'm sure the 4 authors you just mentioned will be really excited to hear this. I know they really take a lot of pride in hearing stories like yours, and it's a job, but it's also something that's very rewarding to them. So I appreciate you kind of sharing that. If you don't mind, could you just tell us a little bit about like where are you currently working? I know you recently moved. Tell us about your current role and maybe what your day is like.
So I am a front-end engineer at a company called League Apps. It is a SaaS company that is essentially an operating system for youth sports. We work with the company itself works with a lot of sports organizers. So people who are organizing lacrosse leagues or basketball leagues, baseball leagues, and have, anywhere from a couple dozen to thousands of kids signing up for sports for various seasons throughout the year. Our company gives them a way to, these organizers and parents and players and coaches, it gives them an easy way to sort of register and keep track of schedules and process payments as well. So it's a really cool company. Honestly, one of the best parts about it is that the better our customers do, the better that we do as a company. So it's really like a nice symbiotic relationship. Almost feels like we're working at a nonprofit that's very mission focused. And so my day to day, I'm a front end engineer. I work mainly on the console, which is the part where organizers and coaches go in and can sort of update rosters or process payments and process waivers and all that stuff. So for me, I work mainly in CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. It's kind of it's a really fun company to be at. My day to day is, I think it's like any sort of junior or mid-level developer. I go in, I'm assigned some bug tickets for fixes, maybe some feature builds. I'll be working with our product teams and our product designers pretty closely to answer questions about functionality and UX, and especially with the designer, talking a lot about the UI elements as well. We work mainly in a Java backend, but we're starting to restructure our front end to actually be more React based and more JavaScript framework based, which is it's a 10-year-old company with a legacy system. So it's been a really fun challenge and very exciting and eye-opening learning experience to sort of tackle these challenges.
It's got to, like you said, it's got to be rewarding working on something that's helping or, activating around youth sports. I think definitely, like, you look at the last few months and kids having to be cooped up more. And I think a lot of people are like, man, those things are so important to our society and our mental and physical health. So
that's actually one of the biggest points of satisfaction, I guess, working at the company, is that I think we all can relate with playing sports when we were younger, or just sort of activities in groups and with teams. Like it just teaches you so many life lessons, and it teaches you, if you lose, you learn how to lose gracefully. If you win gracefully. It's like, I think there's a lot of life lessons you can learn from youth sports. It's great to work with a group of people that are like-minded in that way. And at the end of the day, it's like kids should have fun playing sports, and especially this year, I'm sure it's been very, very difficult for parents and kids alike. So hopefully we keep on wearing our masks. We can all be back out there sooner.
You mentioned you've been working on learning Swift. Are there any other career goals that you're kind of working toward right now that you want to mention?
I've only been obviously programming for about 3.5 years, and I think I'm pretty good. But, for me in my career at this point, it's about just learning more and being better and developing more of an expertise in what I do. I think that's sort of the name of the game for me. So the more challenges that I can encounter in my work or in a side project, the better. I've kind of gotten into a good groove of learning how I learn best. I think that's another thing if anyone's ever considering a career change or looking at a coding boot camp, for instance. It takes some time to sort of get into the groove of learning again, like you learned in high school or college. I've spent a lot of time sort of saying to myself, what are the environments and what are the times where I think I learn best, and how do I learn best? It goes anywhere from like taking notes or finding the right, Pluralsight author that explains it to me in the right way. So for me, it's all about getting better. To answer your question more succinctly, I think I'm trying to move more into a full stack developer role. I've been working in the front end stack for for my entire career, so 3.5 years. But I just realized that, the front end, you could write books and books and books about the front end stack right now. It's just, you really have to be almost a full stack developer to do the modern front end development stack right now. But I think that it's increasingly important for my career that I learn more back-end languages and back-end frameworks to get a better holistic picture of how things work, how to make a full-stack application. So I guess that would be my actual answer, is to become more of a full-stack developer as opposed to front-end engineer.
Very cool. I think there might be some Pluralsight courses that can help you on that.
Really? Oh, I'll get right on it.
Last question. Maybe someone that's listening to this interview, they're considering a similar career pivot into software development from something else, or maybe they know someone who's debating doing something like that. What advice do you have for them?
I guess my advice, well, first thing I'd say is I think anyone can do this. You don't have to be a math whiz. You don't have to be the geekiest geek around to be a coder or a programmer. You just have to start, and you have to start just like playing with things. You got to go look up the technologies. If you don't understand a concept that's being displayed to you, break that down. You have to really enjoy solving problems. That's one of the biggest things that for anyone who's looking to be a programmer or a software engineer, you have to really love learning and problem solving. And you also that also comes with a tolerance for failing and then improving and learning from your failures. Because that just happens every day. Even for the most senior developers and senior engineers that I know, everyone is on Google all day just looking up solutions to whatever bugs they have or whatever roadblocks they have. They might get frustrated by it, but they're learning from it and they will overcome it. So that's one of the most important aspects that someone should be looking at if they want to switch their career to being a programmer. So if you have a thirst for learning and problem solving, you're going to do just fine.
Great advice to end with, probably. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat today. I think people are really going to enjoy your story.
Thanks, Daniel. I'm going to go check out those full stack developer videos on Pluralsight.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to All Hands on Tech. Make sure you check out the show notes, which include links to Matt's personal website, a blog post about his experience learning Swift, a link to his first iOS app, and his current company, League Apps. Thanks again, and have a great rest of your day.